I pray that your weekend was blessed. All of that good stuff happened to you all. Happy Father's Day to all the men of God on today. Let me just finish a few things on here, and I'm going to be right with you all this morning. Good morning, DJ. How are you? How are you? How are you? I'm just going to, I'll add this later. So I just want to give you all your Monday morning word for today, and it is literally go the distance. I heard the Lord say this yesterday, and so I just want to expound a little bit on it, on what the Lord was saying to me to even say to other people today. And it literally, it was go the distance. And so I had to look up what go the distance mean, and it simply means this: to carry through a course of action to completion. And it says to continue doing what is necessary until you achieve your goal. A lot of us, we set these goals and we say that we're going to do something, and then we don't do it, or we do it for so long and then we stop that thing. So God is literally saying to us today, he wants us to go the distance. And the scripture that I chose was John 17:4. And it simply says that I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work which you have given to me. All of us need to understand that we have been given a work to do in the earth until the Father does what? Until he returns. We have been given that work. It is time for us to get the work, and you can't just get to work, but you got to go the distance. And so yesterday I began to watch this relay race. And the thing about this race was there was one runner. She was ahead of the pack. I mean, it looked like she was about to win this thing and nobody was going to be able to touch her. Good morning. Good morning, Zakia. Good morning. And so it looks like she was getting ready to win, right? And so all of a sudden, at the last few meters of that race, one of the runners began to catch up. She began to just run, and I was looking like she's doing this so effortlessly, God. It looks like she didn't put any effort into it. It's like she just started running, and it wasn't like you could see her pick up her pace or anything like that. But what happened was the person that was behind, because they had an incident in the handoff in the relay, which made them lag behind. But here comes this girl, and she passes up the other person, and she does what, y'all? She wins. And I began to look at that, and immediately when the race is over, they start to play the replays, of that moment of that person coming up and getting passed over, onto that line, that finish line, and winning. And what I noticed about that, I said, God, I noticed that once the race is over, they immediately go to the replays. They immediately, start saying how this person won and their strive and, all of that. But the thing that hit me the most about this is once they start the replays, they never show you the other runners. My God, there are other runners that were in this race besides these two runners, right? And I said, Lord, why is that? He said, because the race was already won. But how many of you know sometimes a race will be won, but you still got to run the race? See, these runners that were competing in this race, yeah, the goal was to win, but once they didn't win, the goal was to finish. My God, on today, sometimes you can see other people win, but that doesn't mean that you stop. My God, you never see where they say, oh, the race is already won, and the other runners, they just stop running altogether. They never quit the race. They have to finish. Why? Because they understand my training gave me the training to go the distance. Somebody write in the comments, go the distance. I'm going the distance. I'm going the distance. You never see where the other runners stop. No, they finish the race. They go the distance. My God, even though it was already won, my God, the race was won, but they kept going the distance. And so what we need to understand is that God really wants us to know that we are in the middle of our year, and he wants us to go the distance. You may not see what it is that God said. You may see hints and drops of it here and there, but you've got to finish the race. You've got to go the distance, right? And so it said, the Lord gave me, he said, they were trained to finish. My God, you've got to be trained, my God, to finish. See, David would have never become king if he would have gave up when Saul threw them javelins at him. My God, David would have never become king if he would have allowed the situation of Saul's jealousy to stop him. Even though he ran away, he came out of the cave and came out of hiding. You've got to begin to understand you cannot stay in hiding. You've got to go the distance and you've got to finish the race. Eventually, David had to come out of that cave. He had to come out of that place. And so what you need to understand is this: it is time for you to go the distance. Joseph would have never been in the position that he was in if he would have allowed that pit to stop him, if he would have allowed Potiphar's wife's lie to stop him, if he would have allowed jail to stop him. He would have never went the distance and finished and been in the position that he was in to redeem his family. Some of you need to understand you cannot quit. You've got to go the distance because your family and your bloodline depends on it. My God, today, see, some of us, we have been given promises by God. Y'all know my last book, Coming Out of Obscurity, the Genesis 12:2 promise. God gave Abram a promise, just like he's given each and every one of us what a promise. And what we need to understand is this: you've got to wait on the promise. Though it tarry, do what? Wait for it, my God. For in due season, what? You shall reap. You've got a promise and you've got to fulfill the promise. Why? Because there was a purpose for every promise. My God, on today, there is a purpose for every promise. And I said, Lord, why is it, that we're not seeing these promises? Why is it? He said, it's not that you don't see the promise, because the promise has a purpose. It's because we give up on the promise. We stop in the middle. My God, we're in the middle of the year and we stop in the middle because we don't see the manifestation of the promise when we think that we should receive it. So you've got to understand, though it tarries, you've got to wait for it. You've got to wait for it. Then the Lord took me to basketball, y'all. He be giving me these sports things. I don't know why, but he says when you're in halftime, right? The halftime, the one team can be way out ahead, but at halftime is when they're supposed to regroup and come back, right? Now, what if the NBA decided if there were so many points ahead, if a team was so many points ahead that they weren't even going to do the second half? My God, can you imagine? There's 4 quarters. The first 2, one team gets way out ahead. So the NBA says, you know what? If there's so many points ahead, it's no sense in playing the second half. My God, that is unheard of. No, you got to come back and they got to play the second half. Why? Because anything can happen. My God, in the second half, everything can turn around in their favor for the second half. Good morning, Edna. Bless you so much. For the second half, anything can happen. My God, anything can turn around. You need to understand that we're getting ready to go in the second half, my God, of this game. And you've got to know, you've got to go the distance. We're in halftime. Recuperate. Find out what you need to adjust, my God, and keep going. Somebody type in the comments, keep going, keep going, keep going. See, when you're in halftime, you can't keep looking at the scoreboard. When you're in halftime, you can't see, oh, we're down. My God, you can't keep looking at the score of the other team. No, you've got to finish your race. You've got to finish your game. You've got to finish them quarters out. My God, no matter what it looks like, we've got to get to the point where we stop looking at the opponent and what they're winning and how they're winning and what they're doing. And you've got to play your own game. My God, if you play your position right, my God, there is purpose in that position and you can win your team the game. We have a promise and that promise has a purpose and that promise doesn't give up on us. It's us who give up on the promises of God. My God, we forfeit the promise. Woo! You can't forfeit the promise in the middle of the season. My God. So I looked up and I said, what is forfeit, God? He said to forfeit something is a fine or a penalty for wrongdoing, for a breach of the rules in a club or game. My God, on today, did you just read? It's a penalty for wrongdoing. What's our wrongdoing? My God, in the season, what's our wrongdoing? We give up. What's our wrongdoing? We don't have faith to believe that God is who he says he is. What is our forfeit? It's what I call the Moses mumble. We forfeit the promise because we tell God, you can't be talking about me. You tell God, it's not happening fast enough. You tell God, I'm not qualified. My God, those are the Moses mumbles that stop you, Mansela Bakatala Mansoya, from finishing and going the distance. We've got to go the distance in this season. Stop the Moses mumbling and go forward. Push forward. This is the second half, and you've got to finish strong. You've got to finish strong. And so I said, okay. He took me to the army, and he said in the army, in boot camp, that the part of the regular training, which we talked about training day last week, part of their training is to do what? Run the obstacle course. And I said, okay, Lord. And so I looked it up, and I was like, the obstacle course. Well, what is the obstacle course? What is the purpose of it, right? And he said, so that they can go the distance. The purpose of the obstacle course is so they can go what? The distance. And I began to look it up, and it says, he told me, he said, tell the people if they're going to go the distance, it says, oh, the obstacle course is a way to familiarize recruits with the kind of tactical movement they will use in combat, physical training, building teamwork, and to evaluate problem-solving skills. My God, you trying to figure out why you've got all these obstacles going into the second half of the year. You're trying to figure out why everything pops up here and pops up there. Well, it's to give you a tactical movement. My God, it is to give you the movement that you need for combat. It is to give you the physical training. It is to give you the knowledge and the wisdom, my God, to problem solve when things come up. My God, when you began to do what it is that God has you to do. And I said, okay, Lord, what else? He said, you got to learn what tactics to use. My God, in this season, in this second half, you've got to learn what tactical, my God, what tactics to use. You have to learn how to maneuver, my God, through warfare. You've got to learn how to maneuver through people and situations. This is your due season. This is the season of the promise. And in order for you to get through to the next half, you've got to understand the tactics of warfare, the tactics of people, and the tactics of the situations that may arise. The second thing it says it's to give soldiers confidence in their mental and physical abilities and cultivates their spirit. My God, on today, you have to have confidence in yourself. My God, stop having everybody else speak to you and give you confidence. My God, my confidence is in the Lord. See, have you ever had a situation where you was like, Lord, I don't know if I could do this, Lord. This seemed a little bit hard for me. You know, I don't know, God, can I make it? Can I do it? You know, I don't know if I got it in me to finish. Yeah, those Moses mumbles. I don't know if I got it in me to finish. And the Lord is simply saying here, those obstacles are what's going to give you the confidence to go through to the next, my God, half of this season. You've got to bring down the thoughts and the imaginations against who God said he is, who he is, what he said he will do. And a lot of it said physical abilities, right? Well, how is this obstacle course going to train my physical abilities? I'm going to tell you, I can't do it. I'm out of breath, my God. My legs are buckling up under me. All of these situations are happening. But the Bible says, in my weakness, hey, Lamansuya, he is strong. So you've got to sit back in your weakness when you can't do it no more. When you don't want to go on, you got to sit back in your weakness and call on the strength of the Lord, my God, to come forth and give you the strength that is needed to push through the second half. Your promise is waiting for you. You've got to push for the promise. Somebody's typed in the comments, push for the promise, push for the promise. And the last thing it said is to enable realistic training to prepare military personnel for the environments that they are likely to encounter. You trying to figure out you ain't nobody. Look, I ain't nobody. I don't know why the enemy bothering me. I ain't nobody. I don't know why these people saying this about me. I ain't nobody because I ain't did this and I ain't did that. But you got to understand where it is that you're going. My God, you've got to be in some training that's going to train your mind, your body, and your spirit in this season. Your gifts are not going to be enough. Woo! That's the Holy Ghost. Your gifts are not going to be enough in this season. You've got to be complete. You've got to be whole in the Lord in order for God to do what it is that he wants to do in your life. It says to enable realistic training, my God, so that when you get to your promise, when you get to your purpose, you know how to spot out the enemy. My God, you know how to set up camp. My God, you know how to maneuver and manipulate and turn some things around in your favor. Somebody type, I'm going the distance. I'm going the distance. And the last week I talked about on the job training. And so the Lord said, yeah, there is on the job training, but there are also on the job obstacles. My God, that means while you're on the job, while you're doing the work that the Lord has called you to, my God, there are some on the job obstacles that are going to arise in your life, that are going to arise as you finish in your race, as you finish the second part of this year. You've got to understand, my God, there are some obstacles that are going to arise. So just like you get on the job training, you now have on the job obstacles, but fret not. God has already overcome, so you overcome. There may be things in your course that may not be the same as everybody else's, and you trying to run your race and do what God called you to do according to somebody else's race. My God, according to somebody else's outcome, according to somebody else's training. You've got to begin to understand that this is the race that God has called you to. This is the work that he's called you to. And sometimes when he calls us, there are people that we can't look to get us through the obstacle course. You've got to understand every day in boot camp, they're training through this. And when they go through this obstacle course, there are times, my God, on today, that means they have to get through it in a certain amount of time. But let me tell y'all something. There are some people that probably got kicked out, not because of their time, but because they just didn't finish the course. My God. So yeah, you timed me the first time, but as I finished it, my God, they finish it, and then as they start doing it more and more and more, what they eventually get in within that time that they need to get through the obstacle course. Why? Because they've been through it, my God, because they built up muscle, my God, because they built up in their mind, this is this, and this is how I maneuver through this, and this is how I get through that. My God, you got to understand that thing. Everybody's race is not your race. Everybody will not encounter everything that you're going to encounter. Nobody ever David, he encountered Goliath, but he had Messiah. He had something in him. He knew who was behind him in order to knock that giant down. My God, when today other people weren't really trained for the giants. They were trained to do human contact, body to body contact and warfare, but they were never trained to take on something that was bigger than them. My God, you got to get in the training. You've got to understand that this is your time to get cracking. You've got to understand that this is your season to advance. This is your season to go the distance. You will be able to get through the training. Why? Because you have a manual. The word of God is our training manual to go forward in the things that he's called us to do. And the last thing I want to say to you all is you're going to be thrown some curveballs. curveballs. The last thing he told me, curveballs. And I was like, curveballs, Lord? He said, yes, you're going to be throwing some curveballs in life. And I said, well, what is a curveball? And a curveball, it says you're going to be throwing some curveballs, right? In your purpose, right? And the curveball is to keep the hitter off balance. My God, you're up to bat and the enemy is throwing curveballs, and those curveballs are set to throw you off of balance. My God, but you've got to understand. And I said, well, what's so unique about the curveball? He said, because of the break of the pitch, because the curveball, it looks like it's coming one way, my God, and so they adjust, my God, and sometimes they swing too early, and then they swing at the top of the curveball instead of hitting that thing in the middle so that they can get a home run. See, it's one thing to be up to hit and you trying to just go. It's another thing when the bases are loaded and they're depending on you to get a home run to bring them in. My God, curveballs will happen, but you've got to understand the curveball. The curveball is simply designed to keep you off balance. My God. And the last thing I want to say to you is don't prematurely give up. You have to go the distance. Yes, DJ, unexpected twists and turns. And so you try to adjust one way, but they missed the curveball. Don't miss no curveballs in this season. Don't give up. Those runners could have gave up once they saw that runner ran that race, right? They could have all said, okay, she won. I'm just walking off the track. No, they understood. Even if I don't win, I've got to go the distance. Why? Because there's winning in going the distance. My name is Evangelist Karen, y'all. I got some announcements later on. I guess I'll do them on Clubhouse. My mentorship is coming soon at the end of this month. You can fill out an application and be able to go ahead and start with that mentorship with me at the end of the week. Look for those announcements. My God, save the date, October 27th and 28th. Apostle John Eckhart will be with us here in San Bernardino, California. Bless you all. Like this, share this. Why? Because we got to encourage one another in this season. It is time for us to go the distance and not go the distance in